All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the WolverSportsCast. I am accompanied by Rated R, and Cody Bodie will be missing this week. He's on vacation, so he'll be back next week, and we might be accompanied by Jules later today as well. Had to deal with some stuff. So we're going to get right into it and start right off with NASCAR. Got an update on Kurt Busch. He said he is willing to return to Stewart-Haas Racing. He has been signed. I forget how big his contract is, so he will not be playing. He will not be racing for a different team next year. So he'll be staying in the same team for however long. I didn't look into that. And he came back, and this is from, according to USA Today, easy as them giving me an offer came from Kurt Busch, so we'll have to see if he can still win a couple more races down the road with Stewart-Haas. Moving on, Kyle Busch dominated at Bristol this weekend, won the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series, so we got a sweep this weekend, and that's another big win for the Joe Gibbs team. So I will find, I don't know what the point standings are, but I will get to that in a minute. And we're going to move on here to, let's see, my notes aren't popping up here. Okay, we're going to move on to NFL while I try and get these point standings to load. So NFL, Ezekiel Elliott, man that graduated from Ohio State. He is the running back for the Dallas Cowboys, and he has been suspended for 6 games due to his domestic violence charge. 6 games, and he's trying to appeal that status, and I do have an update for you guys on that. The update is, let's see, okay, so Elliott's appeal will be heard on August 29th, but there's no timeable for the NFL will make his decision on whether to reduce suspension or not. The NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell appointed Harold Henderson, a former league executive who has heard many cases involving NFL's personal conduct policy, to known for hearing the appeals of Greg Hardy and in 2014 the running back Adrian Peterson, whose suspension was upheld by Henderson before it was overturned in federal court. And then the final thing I have on this is NFL, oh wait, that's right, I already said that. The league office tells that the commissioner's decision will be reviewed under a certain standard, which means that would be overturned only if deemed to be a certain type of way. This implies the question will simply be whether the commissioner got it wrong, that it seemed random or without rhyme or reason. And here's a testimony from Tiffany Thompson, which I don't know who exactly that is either. Said for Elliott, the real question is whether Henderson will attempt to resolve the credibility of the witnesses, which is something Goodell didn't do in the making the original decision. This presumes that the NFL will actually be introducing the evidence, including testimony from Tiffany Thompson. Okay, that quote right there was from Pro Football Talk. So that's what's going on. Right while I load up the NASCAR top 10 standings and points, with something like this serious, with no matter who the player is, should it even be reduced to, like, instead of a 6-game suspension to a 3-game suspension, or you pretty much what you did, you made your nest, now you gotta sit in it.
Basically, you caused the problem, now you gotta suffer the consequences. It's all upon you. It's
all right.
Based upon your reaction. However you see things and do things, there will be karma, no matter what it is.
Absolutely. So we're going to go back. We'll talk a little bit more. We're going to talk about the preseason games But first off, we're going to finish off NASCAR here. The leaderboard, the race results, as you guys know, Kyle Busch won the race. Eric Jones finished second. He had the pole for the race, and he's a rookie, so he's been showing that he can actually win a race. Denny Hamlin in third, Matt Kenseth in fourth. So a top 4 finish for Joe Gibbs. Kurt Busch in fifth, Ryan Newman in sixth, Trevor Bayne in seventh, Kevin Harvick in eighth, Kyle Larson in 9. Rounding off the top 10 is Ryan Blaney, and I have the point standings right here as well. Martin Truex is still in the lead in the points, having 551 points. Kyle Busch is second with 850. Larson in third with 845. Kevin Harvick with 824. Rounding out the top 5, Denny Hamlin with 753. Brad Keselowski in 6th with 728. Chase Elliott in 7th with 711. Matt Kenseth with 703. Jamie McMurray with 700 points. And top 10, Clint Bowyer with 642. Jimmy Johnson in the 11th spot with 628. Ryan Blaney on that bubble still on 12th place, 623. And then Dale Earnhardt is still struggling in points. He is 22nd right now with only 416 points. See if any of those drivers turn it around in the following weeks. Absolutely, with Darlington coming up, which is a tough track for all drivers. So that will do it for NASCAR. And now we're going to talk about the NFL preseason stats. I watched a couple games. I'm going to talk about the Lions right off the bat. They played an excellent game against the New York Jets, which they were struggling. Their offensive line is not looking too good, the Jets anyways. The Lions, Stafford played, looked great. They played the other 2 quarterbacks, Rudock and Brad Kaya, the man out of Miami, Florida, the Hurricanes. So they won, I think the Lions won 16-6, so it was kind of more of a defensive game with field goals. So Tennessee beats Carolina 34-27. Derrick Henry played, and I do have stats from this game. From the Panthers, they did not play Cam Newton, but they played Derek Anderson. He was 7 for 12, and Gilbert 5 for 13. Anderson threw an interception. Gilbert did not. McCaffrey played. He was 3 rushing attempts for 33 yards. So another good game for Ed McCaffrey's boy, or one of his boys. And not too many big numbers here. Just a bunch of dump-off passes, short yards. 1, 2, 3 receptions for about the whole lineup for receivers. And not much for defense either. So Tennessee wins 34-27. And they played Matt Castle and Mariota. Mariota was 6 and 8, 61 yards, 1 touchdown. Castle was 8 for 13. Only had 88 yards. They only scored 1 passing touchdown. And then on rushing, they got 3 rushing touchdowns with 2 with Derrick Henry, and Fluen got 1. Derrick Henry had 16 attempts for 36 yards. So they were definitely pounding the ball. And not much else on stats for that game. Miami faced Baltimore this week and got stomped by the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens beat them 31-7, and Flacco has not played yet. Cutler played 3 for 6 and 24 yards, so 50%. So that looks like they couldn't really get much going. And their only touchdown was rushing with Perry, 6 attempts for 25 yards and nothing really else. Close game between Buffalo and Philly happened over the week. Philly won 20-16. Jacksonville loses 8-12 against Tampa Bay. Seattle wins 20-13 over Minnesota. Kansas City put the smack down to Cincinnati 30-12. The Chiefs win. Dallas beats Indy 24-19. Green Bay squeezes out with a win against Washington 21-17. And then the Houston Texans have an upset over New England. And New England actually played Tom Brady, so I'm surprised they didn't win this game. Brady was 6 for 9, 67 yards, 1 touchdown. Jimmy Garoppolo was 15 for 23, 145 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. No rushing touchdowns. Lewis was 7 for 34, and Bolden was 8 for 33. And for the Texans did play Watson. Watson was a terrible 3-10, 102 yards. I think he played against a good defense, so I think he's just it was an off day. Everyone has an off day. And then Tom Savage was 8 and 9 for 98 yards and 1 touchdown. No rushing touchdowns for the Texans. But Alfred Blue was 5 for 20. And then Miller was 7 for 18. And that was about only the other big stats. And then the Raiders lose the Los Angeles Rams 24-21. Denver wins 33-14. Chicago squeezes out 24-13 over Arizona. Atlanta loses to Pittsburgh 17-13. New Orleans wins 13-7. And Cleveland beats the Giants 10-6. So they are 2-0 in the preseason. Let's see if they can be 2-0 in the actual season. So that will be it for the preseason for week 2. In week 3, Carolina plays Jacksonville at Jacksonville. New England plays Detroit. And another big game, Oakland versus Dallas in Dallas. Cleveland and Tampa Bay, that should be a very interesting game. The Jets versus the Giants, that's going to be a rivalry matchup. And then the only other big game I see right now is Kansas City at Seattle. So that might be another interesting game as well. So that will do it for the NFL. Rated. Oh, that's right. The party is closed. Hold on. Give me a second.